So yeah, welcome to everyone. I'm really pleased that we're here today with Steve Crossland, who's on the USAG steering group with myself, the Chief Engineer of Gas and Water at Balfour Beatty. So morning to you, Steve.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Richard, for inviting me on.
That's great, and glad to see lots of different people on the call from different organisations and hopefully different perspectives. So we really do encourage you to submit those thoughts in any way through the session. We are due to be going until about 9 o'clock or just before, so we really encourage you to provide those opinions and to challenge us and make commentary based on your experiences. We'll start off with a introduction to USAG, just for those a quick introduction for those that might not know quite as much as others. If we could just try the little hand icon. If you can find it in the top toolbar, if you can put your hand up if you've heard of USAG before, just see how we get on there. Steve, I hope you do.
I'm just trying my hand.
Great stuff. So I think we've got the majority of us have heard of USAG before, which is great. But I'll just do a quick intro, just to cover off what the group is all about. So as I said, Steve and I represent the data group actually on the steering group, and the steering group meets quarterly. It's normally chaired by the Energy Networks Association down in London. Clearly not for the last few months, and it's there as a cross industry group of more than 300 stakeholders. I think it's now 400. Phil, is that right? Have we crossed the 400 mark yet?
Yeah, we've crossed the 400. In fact, it's probably about 405 now. We've had a few more people join up, a few more members join this week.
Oh, that's great. But it's there for everyone. So whether you're a utility, a contractor, or a service provider, you're welcome at USAG, and to help the industry get better. And so there's the charter is a key part of that. One of the things there is properly planning all the work, assessing all people working on your behalf, carrying out excavations in accordance with safe systems of work, all those sort of sensible things that don't always get done properly. So it's there as a benchmark really of best practice. And one of the things that we focus on, being in the data group, is the strike information report, because our view is that if you don't know if you don't have the data on what's going wrong, how can you fix it? So we'll focus on the strike information. That's obviously the part of the session today. So what is it all about? So it's to promote best practice and safety. It's free of charge. It's totally voluntary. Everyone does it for the good of the industry, because we can all play a part. So you can see there systems, people, and tasks, and it's crossing all those different parts of the sort of solution. We do have the strike report, which, as I said, the last one being based on 2019 information, and we've got those since 2013. So we're going to have a look at some of the reports today, but focus on this year's or the latest one, but have a look back at previous years as well, just to give it some context. So this is the first sort of part of the slide. There's probably about 6 of these. So this, just to give you an idea of how long we're hoping this will take. We're not going to rush through loads of information. What we want to do is have some key questions, so to put it out to the audience. So it will be an interactive session. I really do want to have some input from the people on the call. So we've got there, this graph is showing the volume of submissions. So there's two parts of it. There's the number of contributors, and those that were listening would hear that we had 405 people signed up to the charter, but yet we've only had about 40 submissions last year. So there's 2 parts of this. There's the darker line going along there saying how many contributors we've had, and then there's the bar chart saying how many strikes they had. So obviously, if you can get more people, that's great. But if you can get the bigger players as well, that really helps us draw out better data. So it's really a question to the floor. And Steve, I don't know whether you've got any comments on this about how we can get more people to submit the data.
Well, just a couple of points for me. I think it's very interesting to see that, and you could read a lot into this to say, crikey, strikes are going up. To be honest, from that particular graph, if you want to look at it that way, I think in some respects, USAG will not gain 405 contributors to supporting the strike report, because not all of them are stakeholders that are actually digging and striking assets. So I suspect that the better coverage we get from companies that are involved, that we get their information, I think is better. I do know that we as Balfour Beatty do contribute to this and have right the way through from the start of this. So we have obviously knowledge of what we do and how we do stuff, and we do share that through USAG. But we do want to look at what others are doing. Is there any betterment, anything we can learn from that? What can we do, as well as share that knowledge as well with the industry? I think looking at what we've got there is basically, if you didn't have that slide up, Richard, the UK PLC wouldn't have anything. So this is for me, this is a very key set of results and report that comes out on an annual basis from a group that is fully focused. It says on the tin there, Utility Strike Avoidance Group, and I think we need to recognise that this information is collectively our information, and we need to make sure that blue line there, the volume of strikes submitted, actually goes south. To be honest, so it tends towards the zero figure, which is definitely where we need to be. So for me, how can we improve volumes of submissions? I think through sessions like this, to raise awareness to relevant people, spread the word, spread the message. This information is treated with confidentiality side of things. So there's no apportionment of blame. There's no analysis of who does what, where, and when. Yes, we do contribute to this, and yes, we do hit a number of services through the year, but we submit this through to USAG, and it's done completely in confidence. So there's no sort of recognition there that Balfour Beatty, they do this, that, or the other. There's none of that. So it's done in confidence. So hopefully through raising awareness, through the networking, and also as well with USAG on LinkedIn and things like that, which I think is a very good source of information there. Let's get the profile of USAG up and running, spread the word, and hopefully the volumes of submissions will increase. I mean, the fact is, if we had 400 submissions every year with less than 10 strikes, that is absolutely brilliant. So the more information we get, the better results we can find, and see whether we can improve on those results and improve the industry as a whole. So that's my two penneth on this slide.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else got any comments on that from their experience? Because I think there's that all those are so valid, Steve. I think that the other bit I'd add to them is that we do need to achieve the balance between enough detail on each strike to getting people to submit them. And I think if we went to some of the bigger operators that don't currently submit their damages, we'd probably be able to get them to say, right, how many did you have last year? And they might say 10, 100 or whatever, but that wouldn't be able to, that doesn't help us analyze them in any detail. And I've seen personally how people have analyzed them themselves, but they're not in the same format. And that's probably the most frustrating one, that we've got some really bought in organizations across the UK that do some really good analysis on their data, but it's not in the same format as what we need that's consistent with everyone else. And that's a real challenge I've found, is that encouraging those people to spend the time to convert it, to get it into the format that we need. And so
So it's not necessarily the improved volumes on that one then, Richard. It's also improved the quality of those that are submitting, if possible.
Yeah, I think we do get some that send it in and it's not usable, which is very frustrating. We do quite a lot to try to reduce that, but there are some that I believe, and I don't know because people won't tell us, but that this goes into the too difficult pile because it's not easy for them to submit it from their systems to ours. And so but without the feedback and without the engagement from those people, very hard for us to change, because we don't know how to change. So that's a sort of open wish and an open sort of plea for anyone that's on the call or beyond. If they've got data in whatever data you've got, whether you've got it in great formats or poor formats or whatever, please submit it. Because even if it's not right for that year, if we can work together to make it in the correct format for the next year, then it will help. And I think just picking up on your point there, Steve, on that reducing the bars down, we definitely do. But it's quite interesting when you hear industry sources say there's 60,000 strikes a year, and I'd love to hear someone that's actually got the information behind that 60,000. Because as far as I know, there's this whisper around the industry that was sourced a previous article that sourced a previous article. I don't think anyone knows. I don't think anyone really knows at all how many there are. Because Steve, I don't think we do.
No, we don't. No, we don't.
And again, if anyone's got any comment on that from their experience.
Yeah, I think if I could just, I currently work for a house builder, which has a totally different slant on this sort of stuff, although my background is Transco National Grid. So there's a marked difference between how operators like Transco, Balfour Beatty, and people who actually work on utilities operate in the highway to how developers seem to think it's acceptable to work on their own patches of land. And one of the challenges I've had is trying to educate people like ground workers in the using Jenny and safety principles, when the answer you get back is your principal contractor, you're supposed to hand us a clear patch of land. Well, you know what, I'd dearly love to hand you a clear patch of land, but I'm in no way going to put that on a piece of paper, because the one thing I can guarantee is I haven't got a clue what's in there. In terms of quality of reporting and amount of reports we get, you mentioned 60,000 strikes recorded. That's 60,000 strikes that we're informed about, isn't it? And we will never know the true scale of cable strikes. The number of calls I get from people saying, yeah, we've kind of had a cable strike, but we haven't. It's only damaged the outer sheath of the cable. It's not really, and people just don't comprehend the kind of things they're doing. So I think we need to, we are sort of signed up to the USAG charter, and I do the submissions to the strikes, but I am very mindful of these are the ones we know about, and we get an awful lot. I'm sure you hear about them as well, where we energize a new network on a development, which pops as soon as it's energized because someone's hit a cable at some point and put an inherent fault into it and thought when they've hit it, it hasn't gone pop. I've got away with that one. Let's backfill the hole and move on from it. And these are the sort of challenges that we face.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Martin. So yeah, that's sort of an added dynamic, isn't it? So there's the ones that everyone knows about that we don't currently get, and then there's the big, I'd say underground sort of figures of people that of strikes that happen that people don't report. So I think it's a really interesting one, because I think we have a definition in the strike report on what is a strike, because it's not, although it might sound obvious, it's not, because when you say about the outer sheath of the cable, well, that to me is a strike because it's a piece of equipment that's been damaged. Same with a piece of wrap on a steel pipe. So yeah, really interesting point. And I suppose that comes back to what you were saying, Steve, about the continual education and engagement with industry, and keep raising the profile of how important it is.
Absolutely, yeah. The challenges are there. We know that, and thanks for sharing that, Martin. Because I think it's, I think that sort of story is recognised. It's a matter of how do we ensure that we manage it a lot better, and ensure that safety rules are complied with on any site that you're on. That's for sure. It's a big battle for us all. USAG won't just do this on their own. That is for certain. Collectively, we've got a good chance.
Yeah, I think that's, and I think as well, just learning from the CGA in the States is that where they have this issue, or they have the same issue of where they get the strikes from, is that we should get 2 reports of the same strike ideally. So we should have the asset owner and the contractor. That would be the ideal scenario. Because if there should be some more consistency from the asset owner, because if their customers have come off supply or interruption, then they will record that. Whereas they obviously can't just hide it as some contractors might. So that's something that we'll certainly focus on as the numbers grow, to make sure. And I think from recollection, the CGA, when they've got the same report reported twice, they give them half the weighting. So rather than ignore one or the other, they just half the sort of weighting of each one, so that they get one report. So there's not a miscounting. Okay, that's been really good. So just moving on next to when the strike occurred. So you can see one of the things we've always struggled on is we get the bar chart there of strikes taking place, but we don't have any reference to whether that's good or bad for each month. So because you really want to have that relative number to know what's going on in the industry, what's going on. Are there lots of works taking place, or are there not many works? So is it a good month or a bad month? And so we've plotted them against the inquiries we received at LSBUD, and we do that across a number of different years. So that's the 2019 data there. I think. Oh, sorry, I'll go back one. And I think what we've found previously is that there's pretty consistently summer months have higher volumes. You can see there the bar chart sort of almost reaching the line, and that's something that's been pretty consistent across every year since 2013, which begs the question, why do summer months have consistently higher volumes? And Steve, I don't know whether you want to start the ball rolling in terms of the thoughts on why that might happen.
Well, I think certainly within the report, he does highlight the fact that July has consistently been the worst month of the year throughout our reporting since 2013. So there's something in this, that's for sure. And it's something that I sort of challenged internally, because certainly within my part of the business and Balfour Beatty as a whole, July is our worst month. So knowing what we know, how do we deal with it? And as I'll probably go through that with a few later slides, to be honest, but July is a very busy month. It's the middle of sort of summer. The days are longer. There's holidays taken, so mix matching of teams, longer working hours. I don't know why in certain terms there, but there's a lot of work is carried out in July. So it's a matter of understanding July, what's happening in July, and see how we can manage it. But this is not just an issue that we had internally. It looks as if, obviously, as an industry as a whole, based upon this, that July is a bad month. So, and that's the key question there is, why summer months, and specifically say July, why is that the worst month of the year? I can understand the latter parts of the year in terms of October, November, December time, in terms of level of work that potentially is carried out. I can potentially understand the rise through January, February, March, subject to the financial year and whether you're working in an AMP cycle for the water companies and things like that, in terms of ramping up work and things like that. But the fact is that July is consistently been the worst month of the year. So if we had an answer to that, it would be great, because I would certainly write it down and make sure that we recognise within my part of the business. It's just, there's a number of different factors, I'm sure. So any comments out there in terms of why do we think July specifically, but certainly the summer months where we do have higher incidents?
Steve, I can see Russ and David have put some comments in. Russ, David, are you happy to talk about those?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah,
Good
sure.
morning, everyone. I'm Dave Ridley from Mott McDonald Bentley. Work in the safety team, and work with Russ as well, actually, up in the northeast. Something that we found, not just service related, going back 15 or so years I've been with the business, is you can predict as a lead indicator the spikes and trends purely as a result of holiday cover and lack of familiarity of the site, whether that's the management or supervisory people on site or whether it's the ground force. Every year it's a challenge that we have to sort of weigh up in terms of progress versus caution, I suppose.
That's really interesting to hear.
Certainly don't know the solution to it, but certainly know the problem, really.
Yeah. Have you done anything? Has there been anything that you've been able to do, David, that's helped reduce or mitigate the impact of that?
The reducing and mitigating is a bit of a, I suppose, a qualitative measure, really, because hopefully it doesn't happen. But we try and engage with the teams and have increased morning briefings, sort of increased talking, really, increased alerts. But in terms of an empirical measure, it's quite difficult to substantiate, really. It's something we hope we're doing right, but we can never be certain.
Yeah, Steve, I think you've mentioned before about sending sort of text alerts. Is that something that?
Well, I was going to mention that in the later slides, to be honest, because I mean, we without sort of preempting it, but I will do now. In terms of the level of information, I know we've been sort of part of and reporting to USAG since 2013, but I've been involved, certainly in my part of business, with sort of utility strikes for sort of 15 years type stuff, and I'm still trying to resolve the issues in some respects. But we certainly, in my part of business, we knew July was the worst month of the year. We knew what the worst day of the month of the worst month of the year was. And we also knew the worst time of the worst day of the worst month. So knowing that, I submitted a suggestion which we'd fulfilled, is that through July of that particular year, through July of every Wednesday of that July, and before 11 o'clock of every Wednesday of the July period, we sent out a text message to all, and I meant all, because we didn't know, to be honest, within the business at the time, who actually physically was on site. So I drafted up a different text message to go out by a comms team that went out no later than sort of 10 o'clock, 10:30. And it went to everybody, literally went to everybody, including the MD. To be honest, and he was surprised to see I've got here. So the text message was something like, "Please be alert. You're in a very high risk environment this time of the day, this time of the week, this time of type stuff." And we did that all the way through July. So we did 4 Wednesdays at 10 o'clock, text message alert out to everybody, within which the results that we got was that actually, based on predicted levels that had gone from previous years for Wednesdays at that sort of time in July, we reduced, what's our figures there? We reduced them by around 20% of our strikes. Yeah. So it did eradicate, it did help to reduce. And that was a big effort to try and raise the awareness levels of what we're trying to do in terms of a text alert that went out. The unfortunate thing was, yeah, once July finished, what happened in August? It spiked. It went back to normal. Yeah. So there's a continual ongoing requirement to maintain that message about utilities, about strikes, about this, that, and the other. And certainly, as David's mentioned there, that sort of mixture of holidays and this, that, and the other, site management, toolbox talks, daily briefings, it needs to be, that message needs to be constant all the time and in different formats. So it could be a text message, could be a toolbox talk, could be through a briefing, could be through a visitation, whatever. You've got to maintain at the forefront of your mind for everybody on site. For me is, you're in a high risk activity. Make sure you've got all the relevant information, you follow your training, you've got the right people doing the right things, and hopefully, fingers crossed, and it still is that sort of fingers crossed mentality at times, is hopefully, we'll get through the day without hitting anything. And that at the minute is where we're at, to be honest. So that's where what we did, and take what you want from that in some respects. I think it's just making sure the awareness levels are kept, maintained, and keep fresh, keep refreshing, keep building on what you've already got. Because if you get the same message through all the time, it just gets lost. People get complacent and things like that. So you've got to look to see how you can refresh the message, have campaigns, do different things, make it different, but the message is the same. To be honest, and that's what we took out of the results that we had internally. But obviously, through the USAG report, once again, I think the USAG report confirms very similar results to what we've got in terms of each and everybody on the line. There needs to look at how can we maybe target the worst months. What do we need to do? Is there anything different that we can start to implement? Because it may be an issue that could be resolved by doing some things just slightly different. I don't know. So it's incumbent upon us all to try to come up with something that starts to embed and make people responsible for activities and ensure that they do work safely, because they can. I'm sure they can.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That's really thorough and really helpful. I think it's that real balance, isn't it? Because I remember that Jerry Mulholland, formerly of Amy, was talking probably around the turn of the year on one of these sessions about the locate, mark, avoid project that he put in place at Amy, and I think on that communication bit, it was those 3 words were consistent on everywhere. They put it everywhere in the canteens, on the back of someone's phone. It was that constant messaging. But I suppose that's sort of tweaked when you're talking about a specific month, of just maybe amplifying that in a certain month and really bringing that to the fore, so that someone's got that consistency, but also the raised awareness in those sort of more dangerous or more the months that they strike more assets.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, David. Russ, I see you've put a couple of comments there in the chat.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Hello, David. Hi, nice to see you. I guess. Hello, still there? Yeah. Right. I guess with regards to service strikes, one thing I pushed on our Aldi project that the client was ultimately very receptive for was to really push the past 128 message and do as much as physically possible during the design phase. Sold it on the reducing risk, because Aldi are all about cost certainty. They don't necessarily, they do care how much things cost, but they want projects to come in with in a 1% budget. So they're all about de-risking the project at an early stage, which ties in perfectly with certainly as my principal designer role and passport 128. So we only now appoint a specialist utilities company rather than leaving it to the M&E contractor, M&E designer, which is good. So these guys, I mean, they're a national organisation. You would have probably heard of them, but they're very good at what they do. They produce excellent reports, and every site has ground penetrating radar now, even if it's a greenfield site. When there's no evidence of development, its default it has a ground penetrating radar. survey. So we try and de-risk and then if we do find something and we're a bit worried about it, we go out and do trial pits. So we try and get the 3 levels of assessment. So with regards to service strikes, I mean that's had a massive impact on on-site service strikes. I mean, when I first came onto the project, I mean, we were hitting the services we just installed. I mean, it was that bad. It wasn't great. So better records, better accurate as-built records, certainly of on-site records within the Aldi car park and etc. They're really important and on a 3D model. And the final thing, I guess, is with regards to actual service strikes. Our biggest risk is when we do the access to the store or any Section 278 works, because that's where we step out of our area and rely on third-party utility records, and we all know how accurate they are. So, yeah, with regards to timing, I had a quick check because, for example, we get no service strikes in November and December because that's the Christmas period. So there's no work going on around Aldi stores during Christmas because that's the busiest shopping time. And invariably projects start on site at the beginning of the year because they have to be completed by the end of November. So a new store or an extension has to be completed in time for the Christmas period. So our service strike peaks are generally between February and April. So yeah, so that's where we are. So my with my principal designer hat on, what I push for is just do as much work as you possibly can during the design phase to minimise the risk to the construction team. I want to provide accurate as-built records for those that come after.
That's really interesting, Russ, and I'm sure something I'm looking at John Robinson there when you mention the very words PAS 128, you naturally think of John, and I'm sure he'll be absolutely in support of more surveys or better surveys in advance, leading to lower risk. John, have you got any comments on that?
Absolutely, I agree totally with what Russ has just said. The small amount that potentially that a good quality PAS 128 survey can cost is easily outweighed by reducing risk. And the redesign costs and delays on site later on.
Absolutely, it's it was, as I say, it was an easy sell. It was an easy sell to Aldi because it didn't take a lot of convincing, because the statistics were there. As you say, the delays on site, the cost of getting utilities out, the embarrassment, all of those issues. It was a very easy win because, as I say, Aldi are all about de-risking the project before it gets to the constructions, because and it's understandable, because when they tell the customers we're opening on an X date, that date's non-negotiable.
Yes.
You know, and I wish so many more of my clients had that kind of attitude.
I was particularly encouraged to hear about your trial pitting. No matter which company or however a PAS 128 survey is done, there will always be something that cannot be positively identified, and it's imperative to do strategic trial pitting to prove it, to de-risk, as you said, the project, and it's money well spent. But get it done early.
That's exactly. I mean, it's things like if there's a 33 kV cable underneath the site access, and we've got to get that deepened to construct the site access, it could delay, and it would definitely delay the store opening, and that's the kind of thing that that is an absolute no-no. So enlightened client, I believe, prepared to invest during the design phase, because they see it as they see the ultimate benefit. So yeah, and I keep people get bored of me talking about Aldi, but I wish more clients were like that.
So do I. What I do find with big national companies is you'll get one office, one division doing it really well, and then you'll move to another city 30, 40 miles away, and it's a completely different ethos. It's like two different companies, and I think with the larger construction companies, it's having a uniform language and design and risk management system across the board. I know they say they all do it, but in my experience, that doesn't actually marry out in reality.
In Aldi, every incident is shared amongst obviously all the different regions. So if all the accidents and service strikes reports are shared. So I'm sure the property directors get together and
Right.
It brings an element of competition as well. You know, you want to have less service strikes than the guy in Yorkshire. So
has there ever been any cost analysis there of money saved?
That's a very good question. I would think there, when you see the analysis that they undertake with regards to locating a store, and there is forensic assessment of all costs, even down to like door handles. It's quite impressive. But yes, it may well be I can't comment about other areas, but
no, it's probably confidential. But it would be very interesting to find out. Very interesting.
I might slip that question in at the next project meeting. But yeah, we used to have like annual principal designer meetings, but we don't. They've obviously gone by the by with the pandemic. I hope they come back again. But yeah, Aldi are all about saving cost. So. Then these things do cost. So yeah,
if it didn't work out financially, they wouldn't be doing it.
So exactly. Yes. So it's and I think this is that's the way to. It's the cost program. That's the method to convince clients. Certainly to invest in it's pre-construction information at the end of the day as well, and it is reasonably practicable. So.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you, Russ. That's been great. Phil, have you got? I think you see you got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Rich. Hey, Russ, Phil, it's Phil here. I just do the stakeholder engagement for USAG. I think it'd be quite good if we could just take this conversation offline at some point to see if there's any possibility of running up a case study on it and us kind of promoting that in our newsletters that we send out there. You know, we get those out to, you know, organizations everywhere. So if you've got something that works, you know, and your client's really buying into it, then I think it'd be good if we could, you know, actually get that message out there.
Sure. Yeah, we can have a chat about that. Okay. And Aldi might well be keen to sign up to it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll contact you afterwards then. Okay. Thanks, Russ.
Brilliant. Thank you all. So probably just moving on. We've got a couple more slides to do, or sort of conversation starters. So the next one is when the strikes take place. And as you can see there, we've changed the graph this year to make it hopefully a bit easier to read. And you can see there's I don't like using the word peak anymore. It seems the word peak seems to have been something you can't use in normal situations without thinking of something else. But the sort of initial peak there is in at 2 o'clock in the morning, so those early hours, and then rising up between 11 and 1. And I suppose when we get these reports and when the charts are spat out at the end of them, you go, oh, that's probably as I expected. But that's quite a good thing sometimes, because, you know, although you're always looking for the big thing to share with the industry to say this is how we can reduce them. Actually, it kind of makes sense that most would be between 11 and 1, because there's a lot of work being done. So I think the questions there, and Steve, probably pass over to you, is what can be done to mitigate this? I know you mentioned about the text messages before, and then can these impacts be sustained?
Well, once again, I think the the strikes by time of day have been consistent right the way through the report there. So there's obviously something through the reports that we had. So there's obviously something in this. Now, I know then when we sort of do sit down to look at the results and write the report and stuff, I do always put the caveat in there that obviously these are strikes that have been reported. So it might not necessarily be the strike being specifically at 11 a.m. It's the fact that it was reported at 11. So it may be maybe half an hour before or whatever. But in general terms, the trends are that we've got this higher level of strikes happening between a certain time of the day for some reason. Now, it may be, and once again, it starts to drift into sort of the mindset, the behavioural side of things in terms of the workforce, whatever, because obviously 11 to 1 p.m. in general terms could be around that sort of lunchtime type area within which, something might be happening in terms of, they're not fully focused on the job. They're thinking about, well, we're going to have a lunch, where they're going to get it from, where they're going to go for it, and this, that, and the other. But also as well, if you recall back, Richard, a few years back, there was the report from the Olympics, and it was a few years back, but they did they had a similar review of incidents occurring at around the lunchtime period. Yeah, in terms of London Olympics. And basically what they did was, surprisingly, I did share this with Richard at the time, was actually they related it to the fact that because the teams had early breakfasts, that actually that long time scale between between breakfast and lunch, they basically, I think, sort of stood down the team so they could have a sort of a mid-morning snack or brunch or whatever. I think they literally mandated it, and their strike rates, I'll say strike rates, but their incidence on the Olympics was remarkable in terms of the reduction that was happening. So are there any parallels in this? I don't know. I say it's beyond my expertise, but there's a lot in this particular graph for me that would need to be looked at in some way. So what can be done to mitigate the impacts of this risk? Well, I say we put text message out to bring the alertness levels in there. I think there's probably certain issues around the behaviours of some of the teams, what's happening, and this, that, and the other. Can these impacts be sustained? Once again, is another area there which we've got to really work hard to, whatever we do bring in to mitigate, we need to keep it sustainable as much as possible. So once again, I've not got the specific answers to that question. I've just shared what is around. There's a lot of information around generally about this sort of behavioural mindset, lunchtime issues that probably we need to delve into further, and maybe through USAG look at some sort of academic type review or research into this. I'm not sure, but it's a big area that we do need to look at. But I think it's factual, it's consistent, so there's something in it that we need to do. So feed off that what you can, Richard, and everyone else on the line.
Yeah, I think one of the points you made there, Steve, is about when the strike was reported might not be when it actually happened. I mean, we're always relying on people to give us the information correctly. I think one thing that makes my thought process go is, what do people do? Do people do anything differently during normal working hours as to outside of working hours? And that could be emergencies, or it could just be out of hours working. Because I've certainly heard of people that say, yeah, we do everything, we get the records in during the working day, and what do you do in the middle of the night? We do something slightly different. And I think that's quite an interesting area to explore, that how people manage works in and out of a working day timescale.
Well, just to probably add to that, I know that in terms of that initial first peak that we've got there, it does look very COVID related in some ways, but I'll stray away from that. But anyway, in terms of certainly what my findings were for the, in essence, the out of hours repair and maintenance type work, I wouldn't necessarily call it the emergency side, but we have carried them out over the past few years. Is, I must admit, we didn't get the strikes in the emergency works. We didn't. And I know that Russ and John mentioned about the importance of trial holes. I don't think I've had any strikes for a trial hole. Yeah. So there's something in this. I don't know what it is, but you know, when we do trial holes, we don't get any reports of hitting anything. Interesting fact. The other one from my side is that when we've done the emergency works around that sort of midnight through to sort of 5 o'clock, once again, we've not damaged anything. So whether there is a greater level of awareness or management or whatever, I don't know. But certainly from my perspective, we wouldn't feature certainly in that sort of 2 o'clock peak type thing because it didn't occur for us for whatever reason through that. So once again, I've not got the specific answer, but in terms of what our results were, we certainly didn't comply with the overall industry results.
Thank you, Steve. Martin, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple of things on that. With what you were saying about that graph actually maybe being slightly skewed and showing us when strikes are reported, that's certainly something probably more on a construction side than we noticed when I worked on the utilities. That is exactly what you say. That's when the site manager sits down and decides he's going to pick the phone up. And it can be misleading. We do try to dig into that and ask, I don't want to know when you're ringing me. I want to know when the incident occurred so we can try and get that info. But again, you're reliant on the information that's given to you. And invariably, a site manager will say, because it's easier for him, it's just happened. Yeah, it's rather than go back and speak to the team and find out, because we are always going to get that inherent delay between it happening and it being reported. With regards to what you were just saying about trial holes, we see exactly the same. And I think that's sort of like the theory that if you put a big 6-inch spike on someone's steering wheel, all of a sudden we'll start driving safer. When we commission someone to go and do trial holing, we'll sit round, we'll have a pre-start meeting, we'll say, we think this is where this apparatus is. However, we need it proving you're going to be digging on an 11 kV or a 33 kV or a plastic MP or whatever it may be. And everyone's a little bit more heightened when they do that, and they take a little bit more care. And we don't tend to see the strikes. Where do we see strikes? When it's on services, low pressure, LV, that kind of stuff, where people do get a bit more in there. It's a routine operation. I'm in my comfort zone. I dig holes for a living. Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. And they tend to switch off and not concentrate. And that for me is the more dangerous activity than digging a trial hole on a really, really large piece of plant.
Really interesting. Really interesting, and I think that probably comes down into behavioural issues, which I think we've had a session on behavioural issues, and I think what we've got to be slightly cautious of is just falling into the trap. I know personally that you kind of go, oh, it's just the guys on site, and what we've had over these sessions is actually it's almost always a cultural issue. You know, that someone from the very top doesn't see the importance or prioritizes something else. Maybe it's getting the work done. You can heard from Russ about Aldi about how that's definitely not the case there, because I think there is quite a lot of that across the industry in certain parts of just going, oh, it's the guys on site not doing the right thing. Well, they're not doing the right thing because the culture is not right, or something's not right, or the reward isn't right, whatever it might be. I don't know whether that's the same, Martin, in the development.
Yeah, sort of similar to what Russ was saying. It all stems in a CDM world from pre-construction information and the will to design out risk. And if we're prepared to put that workload in up front and manage that process through, and it then comes down to site managers ensuring pre-start checks are done, Cat and Jennies are in date and serviced and calibrated, and people know what they're doing. One of the biggest shocks I had when I sort of came into house building from utilities was ground workers who, by definition, dig holes for a living, didn't know about doing function checks on Cat and Jennies. Well, that's written down in your user guide. This is basic stuff, guys. You're all carrying a qualification in. I've been trained how to use this. Why are you not doing it? Back, in the day when I was on the tools, we had an area set out in the yard which was marked up, free from any services, where we could do function checks on a daily basis. Why don't we see that on building sites? And it is putting in that level of management and that level of control, which then sets the culture and lets the guys on the ground know that I'm not going to settle for anything less than doing the job correctly.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense, Martin. Thank you. I'm just conscious of time, and we have got probably another three slides left, which I think at this stage we will leave for another day, because I don't want to rush it. If that's all right with you, Steve. We've got two. I think we've got John with his hand up. So I'll pass over to you, John.
Just a quick one, just reiterating what Martin has said about the usage of cat and jennies on site. I think we've all familiar with the case where you look at the cat, it's well worn, it's used in calibration but well used, and you look at the jenny, it's like new. And that tells you that they're using passive frequencies and not using the jenny to its full extent. That's one item. Hopefully most people are aware now, with the latest cat and jenny, the cat 4 and other makes of a similar nature, there is a facility to download the data. You can tell when it was switched on, when it was switched on, off, what frequencies were used, and also there's a GPS location device in there, very crude GPS, but there's a GPS. You can actually see whereabouts on the site they've walked. One of the things I'm doing for a certain contractor at the moment is to analyse if they do have a cable strike. Was the cat and jenny used to its proper extent? Were the right frequencies used, and how long did they spend doing it? And I think that that is imperative. There's more training in cat and jenny use to actually use it properly. It's a fairly basic tool, but it's a good tool. You can get so much more out of it, and I would say the vast majority of people don't know how to.
I think that's something, John, that I'm sure you'll agree has been a challenge to the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
And I suppose probably comes back to Steve on the sort of industry engagement and education bit. And I think on a wider kind of focus is, do we have enough tools in the van already? And everyone wants something shiny. They want augmented reality, or they want something that a new tool that will make it all easier. Should we just instead be focusing on using the stuff we've got already?
I think certainly it's cat and jenny, as John's mentioned there. We've got sort of similar anecdotal evidence about the fact that a year's supply of jenny batteries has been sort of, you count them on a single hand type stuff. It's ludicrous. It shouldn't be happening. We know that. We've got downloadable cat and jennies. We specify them and this, that, and the other. So I think we're on that starting that journey in terms of looking at potential trends. I know that the workforce got a little bit of angst against it in some respects, or a big brother watching what we're doing type stuff. But I think we flip that to say, look, this is to assure you and us that you are doing your job correctly. We don't just download it and review it once you've had an instance. It's there continually monitoring what is happening. So it is once again a behaviour, so cultural type thing that we need to look at. So yeah, are we using all the tools in the bag available to us? Are we using all the training and the competencies that are out there? Are we using all the relevant stakeholders in terms of what we need to do and how we need to do it? I think it's just gelling that lot all together and just ensure that we set a foundation and then look at all the shiny new toys that might be around and made available to us as such, because everybody's in the sweet shop at the minute trying to say, I'll have a bit of this, bit of that, bit of the other, and we're still not necessarily improving our strikes, our strike rates, to be honest. And just to go back to Russ there, he sort of mentioned about, for me, it's I just simplify it into the before, during, and after focus areas. The before bits, yes, sort of John's area, PAS 1 to 8, all the specialists and this and the other. We need to do a lot of work in the before bits. Yeah. And then during the construction element is making sure that we've got the relevant people with the tools doing what they should be doing, provided with all the drawings and the design that's mitigated out all the risks, design risk assessments, and everything else that we need to do on toolbox talking, safe systems work being put in play. The big thing that I find is, and certainly Ross and John as well, John, you find a lot of information on site. Russ has then been issued all that information, say. That information is stored somewhere. That information is returned, some of it is returned back as lays and as builds. We are gathering a lot of solid underground information at the minute. What are we doing with it? Yeah, how can we share the information that actually has been gathered, is continued to be gathered? So that with Ross and all the work that they do, and say Martin, or all the work that you do and the like, what if I then come in to your site? I have to go through all the before bit again to be able to do my during bit. So yeah, the fact that you've got information there that you've gathered, you've provided, you've installed, I've got to go through the full process again in some respects. Yeah. So is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. So, we're all different levels of stakeholders within this journey of the before, during, and after. And I think in terms of the after bit, Russ mentioned it without prompting there, we know that utility plans are not the most accurate. Now, how do we close that loop if we're not providing accurate as-built information and conveying all this information back to the asset owners? And even if we do, are they updating their records?
One of the issues that we faced, speaking to our MU suppliers who will come in and actually lay kit on site for us, given that we're laying PE and with the best will in the world, we're not picking that up with Cat and Jenny. You're very reliant on the as-laid drawings. Their turnaround from laying apparatus on site to providing us with an as-laid drawing was 7 days, which we've done untold amounts of work in that area in that 7 days. And my point, and what we've instigated now on site, is when your guys are finished laying, I'm not after an inch perfect scale drawing of where that kit is. Put us an indicative line and a footpath and just say, somewhere in that footpath now, we've laid a gas, a cable, whatever it may be, just to give someone a bit of a heads up. But until we shorten that time scale of actually getting a laid generated now on site, this is always going to be a challenge. And I refuse to believe in the modern world with all the technology we've got, that it actually takes that amount of time to generate those drawings.
It is an interesting one, Martin. On I suppose the developers and on-site contractors, that's specifically for them, it's a really challenging issue if you can't get the information on stuff that's just been put in the ground. So yeah, that guys, I think we've hit 9 o'clock and we've got lots more things to talk about, but probably can't now. So I think just first of all, thanks very much for everyone for so much engagement. We've had some really good comments in the chat as well, just echoing thoughts on the Jenny and Cat, as it might be referred to, rather than Cat and Jenny, and support for that, for the focus on the use of the Jenny. What we'd like to leave you with, we might have to come back and look at the other parts of the report in a future session, but what should we focus on? And we'd probably not time to talk it through, but if there's anyone with any thoughts, please do get in touch. Should it be a strike rate? Should it be, how many inquiries or works do you do before you, or do you do positively, i.e. where you haven't hit anything? How should it be on costs of strikes, or what best ways are there to improve all the stakeholders' performance? We've had a really, really good summary of talks today, and wide ranging. So I just wanted to say thank you very much indeed to Steve. I'm just conscious of time. It's now 2 minutes past 9, so I don't want to hold anyone up from the next meetings. Steve, I think just to say thank you very much again for your time, and everyone else who's contributed today. If there's anything that you'd like us to focus on in future sessions, whether it's maybe a part 2 to this session, very happy to do so. I don't know whether you would be, Steve, but
No, absolutely. If there is a part two, because obviously I generally do think that the report has a lot in that. It's a smorgasbord of information and dip in and out of whatever your particular parts of the sort of project life cycle is involved with there, because I think there's a lot of good solid information that is provided in there that we can all feast off. And I just want to make sure that the before, during, and after we close that loop. In terms of that, when we restart a job, that we've got all the after information that's provided to us that we can then move forward on with. So I think there is definitely ongoing engagement. More than happy to support Richard and everyone else on the line there, and just share sort of my limited knowledge of this industry, because it's a big world out there, lots of stakeholders, lots of different experiences. And I think we just need to sort of, great session, Richard, thank you, in terms of bringing this lot together. And that's the whole point of, I think, USAG as well, is to encourage that engagement and to learn from each other and see how we can influence. I mean, we do have close links with the HSE. We did contribute to HSG 47, which I still continue to maintain is still a fairly solid document. And I think if we work to HSG 47, in not say fully in its entirety, but if we certainly reference it a lot better and used it a lot more, then I think we'd be in a lot better position. But no, happy to further continue if there is a part two, Richard, on this. But apologies, I do need to leave.
Yeah.
So
no, that's great.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next
Cheers.
session's on the 8th of June, and then hopefully see you all again. And please do get back in touch with us for any comments, good or bad, and it helps us make it better for next time. Thanks very much again, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.